Hello everybody and welcome back to another video about Dwarf Fortress. This is a little update on the adventure mode roadmap. Now this is something I've wanted to do for a little bit, but I was kind of waiting for another update, but I kind of thought might as well just, do it. So let's dive in. So first things first, we're gonna just recap the roadmap real quick. For those of you who missed it, this was posted back on October 4th. Once I'm finished recapping the roadmap, I will then explain the things that they have talked about that they have completed, and if possible, where possible, I will show screenshots of classic UI versus new UI, and also the old UI that they still have to implement. So to start, they talk about the travel map, which still needs to be redone. They also then talked about the main interface, which has a lot of various different screens, and of course, the procedural portraits they love to show off that we keep seeing that look absolutely gorgeous. When they released the roadmap, they also showed off some sprites which were then going to be implemented into the UI directly. Underneath the major features, which are the bigger projects that needed to be completed, they talked about inventory, which includes equipping items and figuring out how to put stuff into your bag, removing stuff from your bag, putting stuff down, dropping stuff, throwing stuff, all of that sort of thing. Followed by talking about needing to work on the combat UI, which is bonking things with weapon, and wrestling, of course, which, as my chat has pointed out, is essentially a overly complex version of VATS from Fallout, with some of the coolest wrestling moves I've seen in a video game. And of course, the character generator, which is the party and character creation screen. The character generator allows you to build your character and customize just about every facet of it, right down to detailed personality variations. This UI is very complex, so I expect this one to take a while. Lastly, they note a few more things, including the status screens, which is essentially your skills screen, which is originally accessed by hitting Z on the keyboard in old school, and shows off your skills as well as your injuries, and general personality status and mental well-being, which, believe it or not, is quite important in adventure mode, just like in Fortress mode. Also including crafting and other powers. Now, crafting is pretty simple in base adventure mode, allowing you to make sharp rocks and a hatchet, as well as some basic bone carving. However, the additional powers option makes the game highly moddable, and that's how you have things like playable Goku and Dragon Ball Z mods. And obviously, you need to be able to spit and pet literally anything with legs. And then, of course, the various smaller actions, such as stealth, movement speed, tracking, odors, and party controls, which I think are a couple of menus that usually when playing old school, I tend to stumble into by accident and then forget are there. The tracking one, however, I do use quite frequently when I need to find my pet bear. Where's the alcohol? I need a drink. And the last thing that they mention is audio integration, which is out of Tarn's control. This is something that the audio designers are working on. Obviously, new music is coming, but we're also getting a lot of new sound effects alongside of it. So now that we're done with the recap, let's talk about what is complete and what we've seen so far. Working down the list, right at the top, we have the travel maps. Now, the travel maps in the old version looked actually quite similar to what they do now. The travel map is essentially your fast travel speed, where you move in the partially zoomed in version of the overworld. It allows you to move through the overworld and fast travel, which is optional. You could also just stay on the ground and kind of hold the left or right key to just speed walk across an area. But when you're fast traveling, it gives you a wider view of things, as well as possible threats on the overworld. Little asterisks in the classic version would represent camps for enemies or possible caves. You could also have icons and locations of known things that you might be hunting. Perhaps you're searching for a dragon or a great bird of prey to slay. Well, it'll pop up on the minimap with a little icon in the fast travel screen, which saves you from having to tab back and forth and greatly speeds up travel time. Because Dwarf Fortress's adventure mode is a huge open world, it can be kind of empty at times in places, similar to any other large open world game, unless you're trying to train wrestling and want to punch every single turkey you happen upon. The second thing in the to start section in the initial roadmap is the main interface layout. Now, from what I can tell, the main interface layout is completed, or at the very least, the layout itself is completed. They showed this screenshot in November, roughly a month and 10 days from the original posting of the roadmap. Of course, it includes the base layout, and Tarn also later confirmed in a discussion I had with him on my stream that this is, in fact, functional UI, and a lot of these menus have been implemented. The next thing mentioned here is the procedural portraits, which we continue to see volleys of coming in. The only thing that they've said about these is that they're still being worked on. In the most recent posts, they talk about how they are still working on variations of clothing and such. So it sounds like this is an ongoing process, as there is a large volume of artwork that needs to be created. But what we've seen so far is beautiful, and I look forward to future editions. Now we move on to major features. The inventory screen is one of the bigger ones here, and they have actually shown this off. If you missed the news update, on December 19th, they posted a rather lengthy post talking about the inventory, as well as context-sensitive menus, which covers some more things on here. The inventory itself is actually very similar to the original UI, with the difference being clickable buttons, obviously. The layout itself and the order in which the items are appearing is, from what I can tell, the same, largely. They've also confirmed in this post that Adventure Mode is going to launch with full keyboard support, and in other places they've also talked about how keyboard support for Fortress Mode will be returning at some point in the future, alongside of better searchable menus and filtering and such, which Putnam has been working on. In this post, they also elaborate on a context-sensitive menu, which is going to be usable with both the mouse and the keyboard, and with the keyboard, you'll be using your look action. This menu allows for movement options, conversation options, or upcoming combat actions. Adventure Mode has a lot of very in-depth UI, which leads to a lot of different screens being necessary for gameplay. My one concern with this, though, is will I still be able to access those different screens with keyboard shortcuts, or do I have to use the context-sensitive menu? I'm actually really curious about which is going to be the main mode of play here. Do I have the option, or is it one and not the other? Do I get both? Because I would like to be able to still hit Shift-A to attack something and then Alt-Y to confirm, instead of having to hit the look button, tab over them with the keyboard, and then select it. For Adventure Mode, I'm primarily going to be using keyboard at launch, considering I generally prefer keyboard anyway. I also fully plan on going back to keyboard mode once it is compatible with Fortress Mode. So for me, questions like this are important, and I'd like to see them answered in the future. In this same post on December 19th, they also give us a little update on the art. Carolyn's still working on features for the portraits. As we can see, there's now teeth missing from goblins and scars and such, as well as statues has been what Jacob has been working on. So let's review what has been completed on the roadmap. Well, underneath this major feature screen, which I was talking about most recently, from what we can tell, inventory is done. The context-sensitive menu talks about conversations, as well as different movement options, which I would assume is climbing, and conversation options. And they refer to combat as up and coming. So based on the major features list, conversations are at least partially complete to complete. The character generator is still incomplete, and combat is still being worked on. And from this to start section at the beginning of the roadmap, they talk about the travel map, which we've seen. They've stated that it's being iterated on, so I guess that means it's an active work in progress, if not largely complete. Main interface layout seems to be complete, and as I said earlier, the procedural portraits are a work in progress. Lastly, they do also mention, the status screens, the journal screen, the crafting, and other powers, as well as various small menus and actions. It sounds like bits and pieces of these are just kind of getting completed as stuff is going along. When I actually look at this, it very much sounds, based on that context-sensitive menu, that some of this might be covered in that. However, it's kind of hard to tell specifically because we haven't been given a list or anything. The biggest things yet to be shown or completed for me are the status screens, character generation, and the combat menu. I know Tarn mentioned in the interview that I did with him that cabin building or campsite creation may or may not be included. This is a menu that allows you to build a small settlement for your character, as well as furnish it to some degree using wood. If it does miss the initial launch, then it will be updated and added in shortly after launch, as Tarn has confirmed. And I'm also going to pull this one line that Tarn said from the Future of the Fortress in the answer to the question about small additions to Adventure Mode, and Tarn's response simply was, "We'll see. We have plotted several pathways forward that will interact with the April deadline. If we don't get to the coolest stuff, it'll still come right after." So, they are planning new things. I'm currently recording this about a month after the last post because I'm recording on the 12th, and the last post was on December 19th. So who knows? Maybe we'll see those combat menus this next week. I'm curious, what is the features that you are most interested to see the UI reworks of? I personally really would like to see that combat menu because in the old version, it's just a list. Personally, I wouldn't mind just having a list because it is pretty clear as to what it is, but I have this odd feeling that we're gonna get some sort of mannequin that you can click on or something. I'm not sure. What would you like to see next? What are you looking forward to seeing? And are you excited for adventure mode? If you would like to play some adventure mode, I've actually been streaming it recently on this YouTube channel as well as on my Twitch channel. It's been taking up at least a couple hours of every stream. So if you'd like to get started or try playing some of the older versions adventure mode, you can do that right now and I can help you get started. What kind of other things would you like to see me do on this channel about adventure mode? I'd love to hear your feedback. Thank you very much for watching this video and I hope to see you in the next one.